Instagram friends. What are you doing?
I'm wet.
Why are you
I got a tire.
Well, then change your clothes. If you get wet, just change your clothes. You guys, you're fine. You're not gonna die. I'm gonna give people a chance here to log on. While I'm waiting, why don't I share? What's this? This is what I'm going to be coloring my hair with tonight or tomorrow. Because I love purple. So, wait for that to come. Yay, purple. Okay, so now that that's over. I always sit in this spot because I love this location, but I also feel like I'm always squinting because of the sunlight. But it's where I can find the most quiet from the children for now. So I didn't get a whole lot of prep for this live since I just kind of thought about it this morning after last night's conversation on the holistic psychologist. And I've been following her for a while, and a lot of her stuff really resonates close to me and have been, you know, they mirror a lot of my own thoughts. So I share a lot of her beliefs as well. However, I have not been trained as a psychologist. I have always had a very, very strong connection with psychology, I guess you could say. It's always been something that's interested me. It's always something that I did well in school in terms of it, that unknown of the mind and how it connects to our actions and our behaviors and how we react in the world is it's an interesting subject. So the more recent connection I've kind of had, like the holistic psychologist said as well, is between, you know, the traumas and the childhood issues and mental illness. So that is what I wanted to talk about in this, because there was such an interest in the connection of mental health and spirituality. So it's something I'd like to get into a little bit. So spirituality first is something that I've come fairly spontaneously into, as I was raised Catholic, did all that Catholic confirmation, baptism, all that stuff. I was raised Catholic, did Catholic church, and once I hit high school, I moved away from it for many different reasons. Some sort of rebellion to start out with, and it just it never felt right to me. And I was going to make another video speaking to religion and spirituality, because they connect, but they're also very different. I've delayed that video just because I know how connected a lot of people are to their religion. So this might really break down a lot of walls, I hope, not only to those in specific religions, but to those who I don't want to say resent, what's the word I'm trying to think of here? Resist spirituality and religion because of the childhood experiences, myself included, as I rejected it. Rejected would be what I was thinking of. So as I rejected a lot of that once I got in high school, pushed away and had a lot of these unsavory experiences through high school and college, leaning on pretty heavy alcohol I'm always cautious to say addiction, but it really was an addiction. I haven't talked about this before, but I mean, through college I was drinking. Any of my friends from college would know that. 3 nights a weekend, and it was excessive. And it got dangerous. I was putting myself in dangerous situations with other people. And so, what was that? Okay. So up until, I'm 33 now, so that was college. I have something in my eye here. So from high school all the way up until maybe the last couple of years, I've completely rejected religion and spirituality. The idea of a God and anything outside of ourselves was just something I never really put much thought into. Though I knew I felt that there was something outside of us, or hoped that there was something more, I never really knew. And I never really explored it. I was stuck in a cycle of unhappiness, depression, just sadness about life, and not doing what I want. My God. Can't believe this isn't my... Okay. So, to bring it back to this, after having my children is where, my first son is 7, that's kind of where a lot of the questioning of our reality came for me. Leaning into holistic medicine, leaning away from doctors, not getting vaccines, questioning how we're living and what food we eat. And then just the last couple years, this significantly in the last 6 months, beginning of this year, really, there's been this mass awakening on the earth as a whole, and very much so within myself, kind of triggered from a shamanic healing session I did in January. And I think that just opened up a lot of channels and triggered a lot of questioning and opening certain awarenesses of myself. So since January, I've done a lot of digging and a lot of learning and a lot of healing, meditation, and just things, exploring my history, exploring my past self, exploring where triggers come from, how they work for you, just lots of digging into not only our physical health and spirituality, the energetic connections, and how that relates to mental health. Because for me, I have not been one who's leaned into pharmaceutical medications. Back when I was, college and younger, I never used it, I guess. It's just, I never felt compelled, though I didn't necessarily have I didn't really have like any negative feelings toward it per se, as I hadn't done any deep research into the side effects and how pharmaceutical medicines can affect our body. It just wasn't something I felt compelled to use. So having that time where I've been free of any restriction of medicine, I think has been a awakening in itself for me to be able to look objectively to what I've dealt with mentally and physically, and how I've been able to pull myself out of stuff without the use of medications. And that, I think, comes from a certain innate instinct to connect with nature. And there's a lot we can go on into where that comes from, and our genetic histories, and how that connects to the cosmos and interdimensional stuff. But strictly speaking, when it comes to mental health and spirituality, our allopathic way of diagnostic and treatment based does not acknowledge any type of spiritual or energetic approach. It's just, you really have to search for someone, a lot of times maybe in like integrative medicine, as you delve into things like Reiki and even acupuncture, you have to search into more Eastern medicine modalities to find people who understand the energetic and spiritual aspect of ourselves and how that affects us. And that trauma responses is really at the core of almost every type of reactionary, emotional, and mental-based, mind-based responses. So when we think about mental health, think about it not on the chemical level. We've been very conditioned into the idea that mental health issues is strictly a chemical imbalance. And I want to really underline that has not been something verifiable and scientifically confirmed, because there's a certain process for you to truly what's the word I'm thinking of here? To just study and break down the brain in terms of the chemical components. And it usually can't happen until death, that they can look at that kind of stuff within the brain. So there are certain ways that you can view the brain waves and the energetic pulses throughout it, but it doesn't view the chemicals. And I think we've been brought to this point out of a certain amount of assumption about our bodies in terms of matter, and not connecting the matter with the energy. And this is a very interesting field once you get into quantum physics and understanding how matter and energy work together. We're not just a piece of matter where chemicals affect us so then we behave erratically or manically or whatever. There's a very, very strong energy that flows through us, through our chakras, and connects us to our source. It connects us from the source through the earth and grounds us. And so there are 2 chakra channels within your head alone, which is the third eye and the crown. And those 2 are very, very connected to our awareness, our kind of cognitive stability and how we view the world, our reality, our awareness of our reality. And the crown is that spiritual connection to the divine. So the work that I've done recently, very recently, working into the chakras, you can pinpoint within each chakra certain emotional and physical symptoms related to blockages within each chakra. And it all relates directly to, childhood traumas and even past life's generational traumas, and how those manifest energetically within you to produce symptoms. So as with everything, there's always a root cause. Nothing just happens because it's chemically imbalanced. That's not how our bodies work. We are an energetic frequency being that forms... Okay, so this is hard to explain. We are waves of energy. Our entire body is waves of energy and frequency. What happens is this observation effect that puts you, that creates the vision of your form. So the reality of our form isn't just physical matter. That has to do with the observational effect. And there are studies that you can look into that are that talk about the observation. Is it called observational effect? I think that's what it's called. Where literally the observation of something initiates it to manifest. Again, studies in quantum physics are really opening our awareness to this mind and spiritual connection. Joe Dispenza is a wonderful person to follow as well. I'm actually reading one of his books, which is where a lot of this stuff is just kind of coming up inside me. I can't remember the name of it. The Art of Being, or Art of Being Yourself, or something like that. So, let me think of where I was going. Oh, so as a yoga teacher, I've gone through all different types of yoga and meditation, and we get into chakras very often. And it was all just surface level for me until I started working into the spiritual aspect of it and realizing the really deep connection of our mind and movement to the energies. So kind of that mind meditation, movement yoga, into the energy and how it affects our bodies. That's why oftentimes when people have depression or things like that, they're told it's good for you to get out and do stuff, like to exercise and to get outside and to meditate, because those are things that help you ground into your body. Remember I said how we're waves. We're really energetic waves, really, that form into this body when it's viewed. But on a on a higher frequency level, we'll be able to see that a lot of us are really just light beings of energy. And our mental health, I think, again, this is my opinion that I've come to on these topics, which is not a make or break. It's not a right or wrong. It's just an understanding I've come to, that mental health is very often misdiagnosed and misunderstood because modern medicine doesn't view the connection of the body to energy and spirituality. It's very focused on just the physical and diagnosing symptoms in order to treat with a medicine. So it completely ignores your astral self, your spiritual self, the soul, which is inside of you. And many of these medications actually just numb you down. It pushes that soul self, that inner higher self that wants to get out, and kind of suppresses it. So that's why when we say that certain medications help with things like that, depression or schizophrenia was the one we were specifically talking about last night. When we say it helps, or it's treating your symptoms, but it is not curing or healing anything. So when you take a medication for something like that, it's often a lifelong necessity. There's no healing involved in that. So that, for me, isn't a fix. It's a numbing. It's a management. And that is a huge disservice to our soul self and the higher spiritual being that we are all meant to be. And most often, I think mental health in our current society is something that is manifested over experiences from our childhood, the continued suppression of our emotional state and inability to cope with challenges through our lives, and the fast-paced society that we're continued to live in. Kind of this daily work, eat, sleep scenario and never having a chance to sit within yourself and consider what you're doing or what else your potential is, what your true purpose is here. I wrote notes of what I wanted to talk about, and of course I never pay attention to it, but I've gotten to all of it, of course. One key thing I wanted to mention is how you really need to get a much stronger connection to your intuitive self and that inner gut feeling that we often have that's always kind of told to ignore. You know, we're always told to ignore it and listen to more factual stuff. Listen to the science and the facts and the physical things, the tangible things that I can put in front of you. And that we're taught to question our intuitive knowledge. And often we have things like claircognizance, which is something I'm connecting with a lot more. It's literally called clear knowing. And it's a form of clairvoyance. There's many different forms of clairvoyance and psychic gifts that come with spiritual awakenings. Of course, that is a symptom of Kundalini, is your Kundalini awakening as well, which is related to that schizophrenia I was talking about. And I'm going to talk about the symptoms here in a second. So this claircognizance is literally just getting spontaneous messages, or you're just kind of receiving these spontaneous messages in yourself of just knowing certain things without without a thought process, without your conscious thought process. It's just understandings and knowings that pop in your head. Like you're just like, oh, yeah, I remember that like you just know something. Things just kind of come to your understanding. And I've had this my entire life, and I never understood really where it came from. And now as I'm understanding it, it happens a lot more. And this mental health and spirituality thing is something that related to that. Is as I was reading posts last night on her page, this knowing just came inside of me, and that's why I had to comment the way I did. It just kind of clicked for me that mental health is not something that needs to be medicated. And I understand people's feelings toward needing to do something because you're just kind of losing it, or people get manic and they just don't know how to take care of themselves. And that, again, comes back to that the way we're raised, we're not taught how to cope with this stuff because we just don't have an understanding of it. It's not something we're taught. No one who's been taught about Kundalini awakenings in school, or the chakra system, or that our energy, our body is energy. I didn't learn that in school. Our school system is I hate to say it, as I was a public school person, our school systems are very biased and extremely dated in what you're learning. And that is why I will always advocate for homeschooling and unschooling and letting your children lead, because our children are the ones who are born with a higher and more pure frequency than we are. If you let them lead, you'll be amazed at how they learn and what they learn, and just that knowing themselves that they'll get. So I can't stress that enough, that if you have the ability to homeschool or unschool and really let your children lead in their learning, I really encourage you to do it. So Kundalini, what is Kundalini? This is something I learned in my yoga training and history, and recently tapped into it a little bit more. So what Kundalini is energy that's coiled within your spine. So it can be called different things based on which religion you might be in, but all religions around the world have a certain name of kind of what this energy is within you. And as it elevates, it creates this spiritual enlightenment. So think of it like a coil around your spine. So you know the spinal column. Just think of it like an energetic coil at the base of your spine. And it sticks there because there are blockages in each of your chakras. It's a lowered frequency. So when you're at a lowered frequency, that kundalini won't wake up. And as you start to elevate, work on certain healing of the chakras, healing childhood traumas, healing things that you struggle with. Often, great loss opens that up as well, initiates that awakening, like a loss of a parent or a loss of a sibling or someone close to you, some sort of tragedy, or it could be to yourself as well. Some sort of tragedy can often trigger a spontaneous awakening. And that is usually when people start to get into more of a manic and psychotic, a psychosis, because it just comes out of nowhere and you're dealing with this death or devastation of some sort. And then you're having all of these crazy energetic symptoms of an awakening. And it can be very jarring. And it can very much cause you to end up in a mental hospital because you just don't know how to deal with it. And I love Christina Lope's discussion on this. She had a spontaneous Kundalini awakening and she had a very difficult time with it. So I think if you feel like you may have gone down that route or dealing with it now, go on YouTube and find Christina Lope's The Heart Alchemist. She has very great discussions on Kundalini awakenings and her personal harsh one. I think I've been having them gradually, thankfully. The gradual process is much easier on you. Like this year, as something triggered in me in January, I think I've had a slower awakening of just new knowledge coming up as I'm digging. Like I've been digging into spirituality and healing and all the different areas and modalities that you can use. I have a long history of nutrition. That's been what I've worked in for a really long time. I was a personal trainer before I had kids. So I've always been in the health and wellness area, and that's always been a very strong interest for me. And it only recently kind of shifted over to the healing side and having interest in the connection of the mind, body, and soul, that true connection of the mind, body, and soul, and what that means. It's very much kind of a cliche phrase that people have, connect the mind, body, and soul. But what does that truly mean? I mean, when it comes to healing, truly healing your body, that's the way we need to look at it, that whole body healing process, beginning with the physical. If you don't start with that physical, the nutritional and activity level of getting your body healthy, then you can't move forward into the spiritual aspects because your body is in such a low frequency and in a sick frequency. And that's where a lot of us are sick, especially in America. We're very lowered and sick and very dependent on healthcare and medications. And that keeps us low. It keeps our energies low. And with the awakening we're seeing in the world right now, we need to become aware of what all of that healthcare is doing to us. And I made a video the other day about my feelings about healthcare and the push for universal healthcare. I don't agree with it. And please go look at my video of why. Because I don't think healthcare is working for us. I think it's sick care. And modern medicine has done great in terms of just the general knowledge of sanitizing things and having cleaning wounds and emergency care, resetting bones, surgeries for life-saving surgeries, just being able to bring people back from the brink of death. I mean, we have amazing emergency medicine, and it's something that we obviously need. But outside of that emergency medicine, our healthcare system is really hurting us. And I'll stand by that as someone who's been exploring holistic modalities for 8 or 9 years now, I guess you could say. I I can't support this mass medication of people. And there's such a conflict of interest with healthcare to pharmaceutical companies, and psychiatry is very closely linked to that as well, which is why I think this mental health brings into it. I don't think a lot of people understand the strong link that psychiatry has to pharmaceutical, and how many times the hardest part with mental health is that it's very subjective. There's a list of symptoms, and they're it's just a collection of symptoms on it, and it's not confirmable in testing like it is in a lot of other things. Like, you can test to see your organ function and stuff like that, or x-rays to see how your body, your bones are broken. There's not that type of testing that you can really use to confirm a mental health diagnosis. It's completely subjective of who you're seeing, or even yourself. I think a lot of times we can pull ourselves into this deep darkness of depression, of course, since that's such a common thing. I'm going to talk to that. And feel so vulnerable and such victims to our minds that we lower our frequency and energy so much that it's so hard to pull ourselves out of. And then when you get a little bit of that relief from a medication, you feel like you're getting better, or you feel like you're getting this cure or treatment. And I think there is a very strong correlation between that placebo effect, actually, as well, with mental health and medications. That doesn't mean that there might not be a change in symptoms, because I think there certainly can be with the use of medication with mental health. However, within your body, how those medications are being used, it numbs you. It numbs the soul. It numbs your, I don't know how to say, your energy. All medications do. And that's why I have and always will stand, not really against, but always for the holistic healing, whatever modality you choose, over pharmaceutical medications. Because when you go the holistic route, you are working to empower yourself. I think that's a really key difference when you explore holistic health, whether that be energy healing, Reiki, acupuncture, chiropractic, nature medicine, herbalism. That's something I'm passionate about. Essential oils. There's a greater sense of empowerment when you pull yourself away from that modern medicine, the pharmaceutical perspective, and seek out your own methods. That alone changes your energies and empowers you in a self-healing process. And I had made a post earlier today, and I said that your ability to heal is, you have an innate ability within yourself to heal yourself. Every single one of us do. And once we get stuck in this victim mentality of something taking over you, which is often what I see within mental health, and I've been there. This isn't a judgment. It's just an observation. This feeling of you being out of control is almost your soul being out of your body. And that is where the schizophrenia comes into it. Even dementia. If you look at dementia, My grandpa had dementia. The grandpa who was married to my grandma who had schizophrenia. So I've dealt with those mental aspects, those mental health aspects. And I have recently learned the connection between dementia and actually the soul escaping the body. Because as they go closer to death, for lack of a better way of saying it, often when people are coming through dementia or come into dementia, they're often on a path to death, within a few years or something after. And what happens is when that soul has not dealt with their past traumas, that has all been manifested within the body, and the soul actually is moving from the body in order to try to cope in the astral realm. I don't know if that makes sense to you, and I don't know if I'm explaining it right, but that's what it means when you see people with dementia or Alzheimer's, and it's common for you to kind of be like, they're not themselves, or it's like they're not even there. It's because often they are in and out of the body. Sometimes they're back and they see who you are and they know who you are. That's that awareness coming back in. But the soul it's an escapism. Just like addictions are an escapism for not able to cope. It's lack of coping mechanisms. That is the root of a lot of this, especially mental health. I did not have strong emotional support as a kid. Not at all. So I did not have the proper ways of coping with certain emotional challenges that have come up in my life. So what was my numbing? Alcohol. And I used marijuana too, but that actually wasn't really as much numbing as the alcohol was. It makes you forget and pass out. That was a common cycle for me. So that's that numbing. That's a physical numbing of the body. So when you do something like a medication, that actually emotionally numbs the body. So it's almost like being in a state of intoxication all the time. And again, this is zero judgment. This is just how I feel about the medication of mental health. Because I think it does a lot more harm than it does good by simply managing symptoms with a medication and not acknowledging the deeper traumas and challenges and blockages within the chakras that connect to mental health issues. And I do have two videos on my YouTube. My link is in my bio. If you want to go look at I talk to emotional and physical blockages within the chakras and how you can approach healing them. I have 2 parts to it, part 1 and part 2, and I have a lot longer than I planned on. But if you go look at those videos, you can see a lot of those emotional and physical symptoms that manifest in which chakras they manifest in. So that'll give you kind of a breakdown of what this really means and how you can really approach this type of healing. And I recently decided that I am going to be creating a course about a journey through the chakras, is what I'm going to call it. Literally just came to my mind last night as I was saying the claircognizance. It's kind of that clear knowing. Sometimes just ideas pop into your head out of nowhere, and that was one of them. I feel like that was something I just am being drawn to do. So I'm going to do this course of journey through the chakras. I'm creating it on Teachable right now. And it's going to be a course. Each chakra will have a week that we'll work through, and there'll be a meditation involved and like a live streaming involved in each, and healing methods, just discussions around each chakra, what manifests in those chakras, and ways that we can go into meditation and work on healing them, kind of inner child healing, the shadow work that goes with this. shadow work is very difficult. It's that step that we take to take control of our own health. And I mentioned the empowerment that comes with seeking out holistic healing. And this is part of that. You are empowering your own self-healing when you simply the intention of stepping into this type of healing, you are connecting energetically to that intention of healing yourself, which in itself is healing. You're triggering a certain amount of inner higher self healing just with your intention of going that direction. Our mind, higher self connection and intention is far more powerful than we can even imagine. A note on that, Joe Dispenza, the book I have it on Audible that I'm listening to right now, spoke to that, the mind and intention, where a thought can have a thought, a prayer, for example, just speaking the prayer, not really having, there was a study done on it, just speaking the prayer without really much intention behind, or without intention behind it, didn't really create an effect on somebody. The intention, without speaking the prayer, didn't really manifest anything as well. But when they had the speaking of the prayer or song, or it doesn't have to just be prayer, it's whatever way that you're projecting a feeling of healing or intention for someone. What is touching? And the intention with that will have a far greater effect, whether it be for yourself or for someone else. And I think a good example of that is when we hear of these kind of miraculous healings. And very often, those miraculous healings have to do with a certain level of prayer and belief in spirituality. Can't remember the movie, but something, it was like a kid that was underwater, I think icy water, for a certain amount of time and was literally dead. And I think like over a month or so after, just miraculously came to heal and without any long-term effects. I cannot remember. Melissa McCarthy was in it. True story. I don't remember the name of the movie. I don't think it's underwater. I don't remember right now. But I do know that they were very spiritually connected, very religiously connected. I want to say the mom or dad or something was even a minister or a religious leader. So the power, and they had their whole church community with them in that amazing support and intention from not only you as an individual, but a group creating that intention with you is so powerful. And that is what we need to learn as a collective with unity, creating a collective intention for what we see in the world and what we want is a very, very powerful connection to our source consciousness. So this already went on longer than I planned on. I get in my tangents. Thank you for bearing with me. So I want to, and please ask a question if you have any question on certain things that I'm saying, to break them down. A lot of times I say things, and as I'm saying them, they don't always sound like what they did in my head. I don't always verbalize them the same way, like it makes sense in my head. And then I say it, I'm like, I don't know if that made sense. So just tell me, or you can message me later too, if something didn't quite make sense and you need help with the explanation. So Kundalini awakening symptoms. I wanted to speak very closely to this because I think that this has a lot to do with our misunderstanding with mental health. Because we all should really have some sort of spiritual awakening in our life, triggered by something or being a slower awareness. And for me, I think mine has been a slower progression just because I started yoga many years ago and started bringing in meditation. So it's been a slow introduction and building for myself of getting into that kind of practice. So I think that's why I've had a slower progression to this point. of building my spiritual awakening, where a lot of people who just have no connection, which is fine, you don't have to really be connected to yoga or anything like that to have an awakening. It's not really dependent on any of that. We are all kind of meant to have it at some point. It's just how we get there. And that spontaneous awakening can just be very jarring for people. So knowing what to look for can be so helpful when you're vouching for yourself and standing up for yourself of what you know that you're dealing with versus what a doctor will tell you that you're dealing with. So just understand that you do have a very strong advocacy for yourself, and don't let yourself feel manipulated, I guess, by a doctor to have to do something. Always listen to that intuition. So, the awakening, Kundalini awakening. First symptom, you can be hearing sounds or voices in your head. So this goes very directly to schizophrenia, because that's often something that people have a symptom of, is just hearing voices in the head. Now, whether that means that every person who's had schizophrenia is actually having a Kundalini awakening, I don't know. I mean, I don't have a direct answer to that, but I think that we should definitely consider this aspect of people dealing with these symptoms before we want to slap that schizophrenic diagnosis and medicate them. Because once you throw that diagnosis on somebody, it's easy for them to succumb to that as well. That has to do with kind of that mental, that emotional connection, that attachment. When you throw that label on it, you can get very attached to that diagnosis and really let it become you. When it's not you. You are in control of yourself. None of those labels are in control of you. Yes, I'm going to talk a little bit of schizophrenia here. So seeing light in your head and seeing the environment as illuminated. So visual illuminations. A lot of these symptoms have to do with kind of this inner body turmoil, which relates very closely to the schizophrenia. So seeing illumination in your head coming from, and I see, the way I feel like I can see this objectively is I've come from both two different sides of knowledge, and it's kind of coming together in the middle with this mental health and Kundalini awakening. And it wasn't something I consciously put together. I was exploring mental health in the past, and I am now exploring spirituality and whole body healing, holistic healing now. So it's kind of, my knowledge on both is coming together, and I'm connecting that, yes, maybe these Kundalini, these spiritual awakenings are very connected to the mental health aspect. And that doesn't mean don't ever see doctors. I have my own feelings about that. And if you didn't catch my rant early on, go back once. I'm going to post this back on my feed. So I think we just need to have a stronger awareness of the spiritual and energetic symptoms before we want to slap those labels on and medicate somebody. Because I think that once you do that, it's hard, it's really hard to come out of. So there's that. So one really common, probably one of the most common symptoms with Kundalini awakening is this feeling of almost like lightning or heat, electricity up the spine. And I mentioned how the Kundalini is like a coil at the base of the spine. So as that rises up and goes, it opens up all of your chakras. So you have your 7 chakras up. If you're not aware of that, please go to my YouTube link and watch both of the chakra videos. So it goes through the 7 chakras, and it can get blocked that's something to be aware of too. If there's a really strong like heart chakra blockage, it can kind of come up and get blocked within that chakra and kind of go back down and start to work back up as you open up those chakras. So you can actually have initial symptoms, it go away a little bit and come back again and kind of continue rising as your frequency rises, as your state of being can change as well. So it's not necessarily just a single experience. Actually, most often not. It's not just a single experience and it's done. It can go on for months, years, even the rest of your life if it's not something that you're aware of. You really need to connect that awareness to what's happening and working through the energies and the traumas and the source consciousness connection to utilize what you're getting, because this is really a gift. This kind of awakening is a very strong spiritual gift of your ascension, your vibration shifting high. So it's important that you really understand that connection and tap into it. So spontaneous and involuntary movements, which can be perceived as seizures, stuff like that. And then weird sensations across your body, tickling, itching, vibrating, crawling on the skin or in the body. So those are just 5 of the more common symptoms people have. The list goes on too, but I just wanted to give a really basic description. And I'm going to have to end this now, but yeah, this will connect you to the divine at the end of it or through it. So you get this connection to certain soul gifts and kind of psychic gifts, for lack of a better word, and a certain higher consciousness. And if you move toward a diagnostic and medical treatment, that's something that you will stagnate and push down and probably not even come to realize. And that's why often when people with schizophrenia get that medication, they don't come, they're never themselves again, if that makes sense. They don't really get that opportunity to ascend. So I've already gone longer than I wanted to. So I'm going to end it with that. And I will post this video on my feed and you can watch it back if you want. Feel free to send me any messages with questions and suggestions if you want me to do a specific video on something that I talked about today or something else. Please let me know. I'm going to be working on that course, The Journey Through the Chakras. So that should be something that's pretty awesome for working on healing those energetic centers. And it's going to start with a 5-day juice fast, because I talked about the physical body linking to the energetic body and the healing capabilities. So getting that physical body open and cleansed is a huge aspect of this higher consciousness. So thank you for being here today, and I hope you enjoyed this. And I will be back. I don't know when. I don't know what my next one is going to be. I think I had something I'm going to do either tomorrow or Monday related to reoccurring patterns and healing as well. So look out for that. And I hope you all have a great weekend. Bye.